Hey, it's me, NT, and welcome to my walkthrough of the last 4 optional bosses in Act 3 of Hollow Knight, Silksong. I managed to beat one of these bosses on my first try, but 2 of them took me repeated attempts before I figured out how to beat them. In this video, I'll show you where each boss is, how to prepare for it, and break down the techniques needed to defeat them. Here's the location of Pinstress, and the bench you'll start from. At this point, I had 9 masks, 8 extra spools, and the level 4 blade. For this fight, I suggest the Wanderer's Crest and the Tax. For blue tools, I recommend the Fractured Mask, the Weave Light, and the Multi-Binder. And for yellow tools, I suggest the Compass, Weighted Belt, Magnetite Dice, and Ascendance Grip. For whatever reason, I didn't take Pinstress too seriously at first. She didn't seem that aggressive, and her moves didn't seem that bad. But she kept killing me until I treated her with the respect she deserved. The biggest problem is that, although she moves fairly slowly, she's much more mobile than she looks. So you'll have to spend a huge amount of time either chasing her down, or hoping she throws in some ground attacks so you'll have a good chance to hit her. This is why I suggest using Tax and Pale Nails, when you don't need to heal, to guarantee some hits. Pinstress has a variety of dash attacks, including this mid-air version where she dashes diagonally down, then immediately dash attacks again towards you. She can chain this into another attack with a different telegraph, which is another dash attack with even longer reach, which she can then do again if she chooses to. If you're counting, she just did 1 air dash attack, followed by 4 ground dashes. Needless to say, this variation can really throw off your rhythm. But the good news is that all the ground dashes are excellent opportunities for a pogo, and after she stays in the air for a minute, you'll be happy to see them. Pinstress can also throw pins, cf her name, and this is the most basic version, where she throws 1 to 2 spreads of 3 pins straight forward. Avoid or deflect them with your needle. She can also toss pins downwards, which are a little harder to dodge, and she can toss out up to 2 sets in a row. Honestly, since she likes to toss them right over your head, your best bet is just to run away whenever she starts throwing them out. It looks like Pinstress taught Second Sentinel a few moves because they both have the same charge attack. Whenever you see Pinstress gather power and start glowing, you'll have to watch out for the same X attack that Second Sentinel used. It takes Pinstress a little longer to release the attack than Second Sentinel, which makes it easier to dodge. But unlike the Cogwork Knight, she can hold the charge for as long as she wants before unleashing the attack. Your best option is to bait out the attack, moving into range and then immediately dashing past her or away. Pinstress doesn't have a recognizable phase 2, so just keep whittling away at her. Once you learn her attacks and don't need as much silk for healing, you can also start launching Pale Nails at her, which will speed the end of the fight. Here's the location of Gurr the Outcast and the bench you'll start from. For this fight, I recommend the fully evolved Hunter's Crest with throwing rings and conch cutters. For blue tools, I suggest the Fractured Mask, the Weave Light, and the Multi-Binder. And for yellow tools, I recommend the Compass, Magnetite Dice, and Ascendance Grip. You might wonder why I had the Magnetite brooch equipped when I'm recommending the Magnetite Dice. Well, I beat Gurr the Outcast on my first try, so I didn't even have a chance to switch to my Magnetite Dice, or refine my crest and tool choices. In fact, I didn't even start from the closer, but more difficult bench that I showed on the map earlier, but instead started from the bench at the top of the map, and was busy tracking Gurr when I fell into his trap. Gurr is fast, but he only has 3 attacks, and one is more of an environmental hazard. His primary attack is when he jumps up or diagonal up from underground. You can see which direction he's jumping from the dust erupting from the ground, then hangs in midair while he tosses out spike traps. Focus on striking him while he's tossing out the traps, but don't hang out directly beneath him because Gurr drops straight down when he finishes. The spike traps are the environmental hazard I mentioned earlier, and aren't that big of a deal as long as you don't let them pile up. Whenever Gurr drops back underground, strike them with your needle and then move out of the way to trip them without taking damage. Triggering the traps are your second priority in this fight, after dealing damage to the boss. When you see 3 small clouds of dust erupt from the ground, spikes are about to shoot up in those spots. Stay well away from them, but don't worry too much because their hitboxes are a little smaller than the spikes themselves. Gurr's scurry along the ground is the only attack he has that is decently difficult to dodge because he has no telegraph for it. If Gurr is in neutral stance, plan to expect this attack and don't stay too close to him. If he starts it far enough away you see it coming, make sure to get a pogo off him. This feels like a pretty simple fight, which is probably why I beat it in one try. Make sure Gurr doesn't control the field with his traps, and you'll beat him in no time. Here's the location of Voltvyrm, and the bench you'll start from. For this fight, I recommend the Wanderous Crest and Tax. For blue tools, I suggest the Fractured Mask, Weave Light, and Multibinder. And for yellow tools, I suggest the Compass, Weighted Belt, Magnetite Dice, and Ascendance Grip. Voltvyrm has a pretty intense run back, but do your best to maintain your health as you travel to the boss. There aren't any respawning enemies in the Volt Nest itself, so if you're having trouble, try to have full health and silk before entering. In the Volt Nest, the trickiest bit is dodging the columns of electricity. Although it looks like you have a little time to get past them after they light up in pink, this is actually your cue to avoid them, because a prolonged lightning attack will quickly fire off after they light up. As you can see, I got down to 3 masks just getting to the boss, but thanks to my cocoon and the multibinder, I was back up to 7 masks when the fight started. Like Gurr, we're dealing with a boss that only has 3 attacks. But unlike Gurr, these attacks come out fast as lightning, pun intended. You should plan to spend more time dodging than attacking, and don't try to heal unless the boss makes a very clear whiff, so preferably not between attacks. Voltvyrm's basic attack is the easiest to dodge, and consists of little aiming circles that grow in size, and then explode in electricity. This is your best chance to attack Voltvyrm, but don't try for multiple hits unless you're clearly out of the way of this attack. But note that you can attack through the circles without taking damage, as long as you don't get hit. Voltvyrm has 2 electrical column attacks that look exactly the same, but are different enough in the way they move to count as individual attacks. Like the environmental hazards we just went through, don't linger in the columns of light, because the attack comes immediately afterwards. Because the columns come out so fast, only counterattack at the beginning or the end of the pattern. The first attack is mirrored pairs of columns that either move from the edges of the room to the center, or from the center of the room to the edges. You can't stand still and avoid this attack. Instead, ease up to one of the columns, wait for it to fire its electricity, and then dash to the other side to escape. The second attack is when Voltvyrm summons a series of 1 to 2 column attacks on the screen, seemingly at random. I say seemingly at random because after the double columns the attack begins with, the following single columns will track you. This means that instead of trying to deal damage, you should be actively baiting the columns into a clear section of the room and then dashing away from them. I wish I had started using Pale Nail sooner in this fight, when I had full health and 4 silk, but an even better strategy for this boss might be to only attack with Pale Nail. If you want to try this, exclusively focus on dodging, and every time you naturally regenerate 4 spools, thanks to the 3 silk hearts and the weave light, fire off a Pale Nail barrage at the boss. Just don't get hit too often, because you won't be building any silk to heal if you decide to use this strategy. Here's the location of Watcher at the edge, and the bench you'll start from. For this fight, I recommend the Reaper's Crest with the Cog Flies and the Conch Cutters. For blue tools, I recommend the Fractured Mask, Pilot Pouch, and Multi-Binder, and for yellow tools, I suggest the Compass, Magnetite Dice, and Ascendant's Grip. Like Pinstress, I struggled a bit with Watcher at the Edge, but unlike Pinstress, the run back is a good bit more difficult, with all these disappearing platforms and flying enemies. After dealing with all that, and losing to him for 20 minutes even though he only has a few attacks, I decided to be as cheap as possible and switch to this poison build to take out this persistent jerk. One reason I struggled with Watcher at the Edge is that he feels more like a Souls boss than any other boss in the game, and that you really have to learn the range of each of his attacks so you can stay just outside his attack limits and counterattack when he whiffs. Too close and you get hit, too far and by the time you run in to punish him, he'll either block or start another attack. Because it can be so hard to land a hit on this boss without him counterattacking you, we're going to start the fight by tossing out one Cogfly, and keep one out for the rest of the fight for constant poison chip damage, until we run out. Ringing him out also does damage via the voracious worms in the sand, and the Reaper Crest enhanced knockback will help with this. I can't say I ever got our ring out on purpose, but it was nice when it happened. The attack that Watcher uses the most is a rising attack, where he leaps up from the sand or the ground, hangs in the air a moment, then moves forward and down with a sword slam. After the slam is the best time to dash in to hit him, but unless you've correctly judged the range, either by jumping or dashing away or under him, he'll block or counterattack as I mentioned earlier. It's much easier to just lob a conch cutter at him, but I was stubborn and mostly used dash attacks. When he lifts his sword behind his back, Watcher is about to do 1 to 3 swings forward. As usual, these can travel a considerable range, and is probably an attack just best avoided. Watcher can also do a quick jump forward that ends with a shortened sword slam, and once I saw him do a short dash forward, but both of these attacks are relatively rare. If you need to heal, you can run into the narrow corridor leading to the exit for some breathing room, but he's going to follow you in there, causing you to trade life healed for contact damage, so I don't recommend it. Yep, I definitely could have killed him faster if I had been more aggressive with the conch cutters. I hope this video helped you out, or at least gave you an interesting look at some of the bosses. The only boss left is the final boss, who has 4 phases split over 2 sections, so far from a cakewalk. If you'd like to know when that video releases, would you please subscribe and turn notifications on? And if you found this video super helpful and you want to support me, there's a Ko-Fi link in the description. Anyway, that's it for me this evening. I hope you're still enjoying Silksong, and bye!